The following program contains a topic which may not be suitable for young viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
And welcome to Cannabis Conversations, a weekly program that is designed to cure the many curiosities about cannabis and its consumption, as well as shed some light on the missing information. So with any luck, it'll clear up some of that misinformation that's floating around in our social circles about cannabis and its consumption. I'm your host, Green Irene. I'm a cannabis author, researcher, and educator. Joining me today is one of the most involved activists I know and patient advocates that I know personally. Kim Cooper is a talk show radio host and CEO of Northern Ontario's Cannabis Education and Resource Centre. Hi, Kim, all the way from Timmins. How are you?
I'm doing great today, Irene. Thank you so much for inviting me on your fantastic show.
Well, thank you for being here. I know how busy you are. And before, I'm very curious about talking to you about your insights on the social scene and getting your thoughts on the evolving industry now that reform is taking place, legislation has been announced. But before we go there, would you mind introducing yourself to our audience? Give them an idea about who you are, how you became the activist you are today, and the patient advocate.
Sure. Happy to be here. I'd like to introduce myself, Kim Cooper from Northern Ontario Cannabis Education and Resources. No, sir. In short, we say no, sir, to propaganda. I began my life as an activist many moons ago. I've been doing this for well over 35 years. I was a patient from a young age. At the age of 15, I went and seen a neurologist in Toronto's Western Hospital that happened to be from Switzerland. I had epileptic seizures at that time in my youth. My mother took the opportunity while we were there to try and chastise me in front of the doctor for using cannabis. And she said, well, tell her not to smoke that pot she's always smoking. That's probably the cause. And to my surprise and my mom's surprise, the doctor was an advocate. He informed my mom that the latest research at that time was showing milestones being met with people consuming cannabis having an effect on reducing their seizures. So he encouraged me to continue using cannabis. Well, at that point, that kind of shut my mom right down. And from that day on, she never bothered me again about my cannabis use. And that evolved over the years. It helped me greatly reduce my seizures. I was able to get off of all of the harsh pharmaceuticals that I was on. By the time I was 18, I was medicine-free except for cannabis, and my seizures were eliminated. So that's how I got my start.
That's amazing. That's absolutely wonderful. Now, at that time, were you educated at all on how to use cannabis, or for as far as methods of consumption or strains, anything along those lines? I know that that information has come a long way. Research has come a long way in helping with epileptic patients with epilepsy.
Yeah, back in the day, I mean, this was a long time ago. I'm 55 years old, so, that was 40 years ago. So, yeah, times have definitely changed. Medicine has advanced, research has advanced, and our knowledge of this plant has advanced greatly over time. Back in the day, in the early 70s, when all of this took place, no, we didn't have the education we had today. People smoked joints. We smoked joints, we did bongs. That was basically it. Some people made brownies, but it was made with, plant matter, not extracts as they normally are today. So we've advanced greatly in our education and how different methods to consume this plant other than just, smoking a lot of joints every day.
Right. Okay, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's true. There are so many different methods of consumption, and we're going to get to that. But coming back to you as a patient, in my research, I found out, did you not also deal with breast cancer at a later point in life?
I did. That was my very first experience with cannabis, was with the seizures. My advocacy work began then. I volunteered for Normal Canada, well, with Normal US at the time, to bring Normal Canada to Canada. And I volunteered and campaigned on Yonge Street when I was 17 years old, getting signatures to bring Normal to Canada to help us advance the movement here in Canada. Later on in life, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. That happened just over 10 years ago. Once again, I turned to cannabis. Through the research that I had done in my advocacy work over the past 40 years, I had learned a lot about cannabis helping on other things, such as cancer treatment. I opted not to go for chemotherapy, and I used cannabinoid therapy for my breast cancer instead. Wow. And I'm happy to say that today I am cancer-free.
That is phenomenal. Yay. that is absolutely wonderful. That you are cancer-free and that you are one of those patients who did avoid the chemotherapy. Before we go any further, would you mind defining, only because I use the word normalizing cannabis and how essential it is. So as not to confuse the two, my terminology with the company itself, could you define what normal is?
Normal as in the sense of the organization, or the
organization word? Yes, please.
The organization is Normal, NORML, without the A. It stands for the National Organization to Reform Marijuana Laws. It began in the United States in the 1960s. It advanced into Canada in the late 70s and actually came to be officially here in Canada in the early 1980s. They've been very much at the forefront of the movement for cannabis legalization in Canada, but they did take a bit of a pause. For about 8 years, Normal kind of disappeared in Canada. They were having some issues with their board and getting people to sit on the board of directors. It has been rejuvenated. It is back on board and full speed ahead for the last 6 years or so. And they're still advocating greatly in Canada. They have their Normal conferences held yearly in Toronto during the Karma Cup in September.
Right. They're an amazing organization. I know their website has a substantial amount of really good quality information. And again, when we get to at the end of the show, after it's been viewed, you can always go to our website and find additional information on the subjects that we talk about. So coming back to that, normalizing cannabis, why do we need to normalize it? In my opinion, it needs to be normalized because people are still having trouble talking about it. They hesitate out of fear. And I think this is because of a lack of comprehension. You know, when we don't know something, we tend to be afraid to speak to the subject, even at the cost of medical consultation. So that being said, Kim, your travels and journeys, the people and places, the experiences that you've had have really helped diminish fear of cannabis for you and trying new things. Can we maybe speak to some of the different methods of consumption that you've learned in the last few years?
Yeah, well, for sure. We've grown by leaps and bounds. As I said earlier, very few people smoke joints these days. You're not seeing groups of people running around smoking joints. That's kind of bottom of the list now. That's the last resort. That's the last thing people are looking for.
Well,
the evolution has gone greatly. Sorry. That's okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and that's because I think we've learned, especially in the last 2 years, it's become saturated in news articles and prints that combustion is the most ineffective way to utilize cannabis, as well as the most wasteful way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're wasting more of your product than you're getting. Absolutely. Vaporization has become the it thing to do these days. Everybody is vaporizing, whether it be your flower material, actual cannabis flowers can be vaporized in a vaporizer where they don't actually burn the product. They just extract all of the vapors that are good, the cannabinoids that are good, and you inhale that in a vapor, not a toxic smoke. So much better for your health, and also much more economical because you're getting more for your money. You're not throwing a lot of your product in the garbage right off the hop. Extracts, huge these days. Everybody is into extracts, especially those that are in medicinal users. The extracts have a much more higher potency, so they work better with a lesser amount of product. And I mean, ultimately, that's the goal. We want to be able to get the same relief effects from 2 small inhalations versus smoking 2 large joints to get the same effect. So it's much better for our health using the extracts. And inhalation even isn't the go-to thing for many people anymore. There are so many preparations out there like bath bombs and creams, lotions, tinctures, you name it, and it's out there. You can put cannabis in just about anything, and we have so many cannabinoid receptors in our body, even in our skin. When it saturates into us, we receive the benefits of the cannabinoids and we get the effects.
That's right. Well, before we go to break, Kim, one of the things on our last episode, I'm not sure if you caught it or not, but Rick Gilman was here and we were talking about growing your own cannabis. And one of of course, there's the economic value to it, there's the savings, and there's the reward of growing your own. But in addition to that, it gives you a lot more product in which you can experiment with making your own cannabis solutions, your own cannabis infusions. Spa solutions that are out there are just amazing, and I think the home user and the home consumer can start trying these things out for themselves, and I think that's an awesome opportunity for people in Canada now.
For sure.
Going back to, you were talking about the methods of consumption, you were talking about inhalation in particular. One of the reasons I think I love my Volcano, so that's the vaporizer I refer to all the time. It's also, I think, the only Health Canada approved unit at this point in time.
That's correct.
And I know that THC is released from the cannabis plant at approximately 347 degrees Fahrenheit. So it allows the patient or recreational user to titrate their dosing. That being said, when we return, we're going to talk more about the spa solutions, things like bath bombs, body wraps. We're going to get into the difference between edibles and medibles and talk about some creams and patches.
Sounds great.
Excellent. On that note, we will return in just a couple of minutes. I'm your host, Green Irene, having a cannabis conversation with our guest, Kim Cooper of Northern Ontario's Cannabis Education and Resource Centre.
The following program contains a topic which may not be suitable for young viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Thank you for tuning in to Cannabis Conversations. Joining me today is my guest, Kim Cooper from Timmins, Ontario, Northern Ontario's Cannabis Education and Resource Centre. Before the break, we got into the conversation, Kim, a little bit about the inhalation aspect of utilizing cannabis herb or concentrates. One of the things we didn't touch on, though, was you and I know what a concentrate is, but I can't assume that our audience does. So would you define the concentrate for me?
Sure. Concentrates are an extracted form of cannabis. Just as we extract vanilla extract from vanilla beans, we're extracting the cannabinoids from the cannabis plant. So we're taking all of the stuff that we're using medicinally, the various cannabinoids, of which there are over 140 already identified and many more that are unidentified in today's world. THC is not the only one. There are hundreds of cannabinoids within the plant that help our systems daily.
Absolutely. So CBC is, sorry, go ahead.
No, we're taking everything out of the plant. So you're left with an empty shell at the end of it. You still have the plant material, but there's nothing inside of it. And all the stuff has been taken out, just like vanilla extract.
The terpenes, the flavonoids, the cannabinoids, they're all there in that concentrated form at that point.
That's right.
And now these concentrations are done through a variety of different methods, and anybody looking at utilizing a concentrate, I think their caution should be advised in that. Find out how it was processed to make it a concentrate. There are different methods.
Oh, yes. There are various methods of extraction for sure. Some are considered dangerous. You know, we've all heard the stories about people are blowing up and stuff like that, you know, but I mean, these are people that are obviously uneducated, not taking safety precautions, and not doing things properly. There are absolutely 100% safe ways of doing extraction. Rosin is big. Rosin is huge on the scene right now. It's known as rosin, and what they've done is it's a non-solvent way to extract the cannabinoids from the plant. And you're basically pressing it. You're squishing it under high temperatures and high pressure, and all of the oils just come out of the plant. You scrape up the oils, and you have what is now known as rosin. And it's another extract, 100% safe and solventless.
Nice, nice, very nice. Something I wasn't familiar with. I think I had seen something in a YouTube video, but just kind of passed it by. So these concentrate, and you're right, there's a lot of safe and viable ways to get a concentrate from the cannabis plant and extracted from the plant material. And people are making all kinds of spa solutions. I've been doing a lot of experimenting myself at home, and I've come up with different body wraps that have been amazing. We've gotten into bath bombs and bath salts. Before we get into those spa solutions, though, why don't you and I talk a little bit about the differences between edibles and medibles?
Oh, yeah, there's a big difference.
Okay. One is recreational, the other is definitely medicinal. So yeah. I'll let you speak on the subject and your different experiences.
For sure. You know, medibles are usually low dose. A lot of them have CBD infusions in them as well, which do not get you high. CBD is one of the cannabinoids that exists in the cannabis plant that has no euphoric effects whatsoever. Right. The only actual element is that has a euphoric effect is THC. The rest of the cannabinoids do not get you high or stoned. So they have medicinal value throughout the body for various reasons in your body and our endocannabinoid system. Our system runs on that. So, you know, high concentrations of THC in an edible is an edible. When you've got the lower concentrations of THC, higher concentrations of CBD, and stuff like that, then it becomes a medible, and you can function on them. A great avenue to work with medibles are teas. Teas are fantastic for giving you the body feeling of pain-free, muscle spasms stop, seizures stop, but you're not high.
Exactly. And for anybody that suffers any sort of spasticity or the residual discomfort after a spasm or that kind of muscle attack or neurological muscle attack, those teas are very soothing and very comforting, which I think brings us to, before it brings us to the bath, and we'll get there, I define the difference between edibles and medibles as edibles are those lovely little chocolate treats that are infused, and medibles are more what I include in my diet and nutrition. So, for example, in my bullets or shakes, I often add raw cannabis instead of adding kale, simply because there is no psychotropic effect. The cannabinoid THC is produced in the plant as an acid, THCVA, and so there's no psychotropic effect. It does not attach to the CB1 receptors in our brains. So I look at medibles more as diet and nutrition, and edibles being those tasty little infused treats that I like to get to.
Absolutely. I mean, prior to prohibition, we used cannabis in almost everything. It was in our pharmaceutical medicines for everything from baby's diaper rash cream to grandma's Alzheimer's. It was in absolutely everything in between. We used raw cannabis as part of our diet in our foods, adding it to salads and stuff like that, cooking with it. It was part of our diet throughout history for thousands of years until the last 85 years of prohibition started.
That's right. That's right. And getting it back into our diet, I think, is going to make a tremendous difference in the numbers of autoimmune deficiency conditions that we see currently rising. I think we're going to see a new what would you call that? A new path.
Yes. A new evolution to health. People will be getting healthier, and it's because their endocannabinoid systems are being fed with the amount of cannabinoids they need to function and run our systems properly. Right, exactly. And competency or comprehension about cannabis does diminish that fear. And bringing cannabis to the forefront, with it being saturated in the media right now, or topics of cannabis being saturated in the media the way that they are, there's a lot of misinformation floating around. And because we're missing information, people tend to be fearful of trying these things. So let's talk now a little bit about the spa solutions that are an amazing option for anybody suffering from physical discomfort, pain. You've been tight all day, and now it's time for that nice warm bath. Instead of pouring that glass of wine, grab that cannabis-infused bath bomb. Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that I actually neglected to touch on at the start of the show, I have a third reason for using cannabis. I was also in a motor vehicle accident about 15 years ago, and I broke my back. So I suffer from chronic back pain now. I've developed fibromyalgia as well from the car accident, and all of the muscles and nerve endings in my back being damaged. So I have chronic pain. Cannabis kept me off of harsh pharmaceuticals and got me off of, the 15 pills a day the doctors had me on when I was released from hospital after my motor vehicle accident.
Right.
So cannabis is a big part of my pain control as well. And I have recently fallen in love with bath bombs. I mean, they are just fantastic. You put a bath bomb that's infused with distillate, which is a refined extract, more refined than any other extract, and it's called distillate. And they add these to the bath bombs. When you soak in a hot tub with one of these, the cannabinoids and the THC that's in the bath bomb soaks into your skin on a subdermal level. And when you're soaking in there, it gets right into your muscles, your bones, everything. Your entire body becomes completely pain-free and 100% relaxed without the euphoric effect.
Well, actually, I am going to say I have learned, and I thought the same thing too, that without the euphoric effect. However, I have found that a very heavily concentrated bath salt with distillates will provide some degree of a euphoria, but it's more of that sleepy just before bedtime kind of a euphoria, not the cerebral euphoria we're most familiar with in relation to consuming cannabis. Yeah,
it's more of a relaxedness. Your mind, your body as a whole just becomes relaxed enough where you have a wonderful sleep. I will say, too, that much of the effects of that, the euphoria effects that you're going to get off of a product like this will depend on the amount of your consumption. Somebody that is a large user of cannabinoid therapy like myself will not reach the threshold of euphoria as quickly as somebody that is brand new to using the products.
That's absolutely right. Kim, we've only got a few minutes left. So in as much as I would have really liked to talk about body wraps and poultices and all that sort of thing, I'm going to have to save that information for the more info section at cannabiscornercafe.ca on the website. But I'd really like to get your insights and hear your thoughts on the evolving industry, the entrepreneurial opportunities that await us now that legalization is here. We're looking at, I think it's October 17th, 10/17. I can't say that. Weedy Wednesday, I can say, but 10/17 doesn't work.
Well, it's almost, it's almost 10-7, right? Which or 7-10, excuse me. It's almost a 7-10 event, which is now the new form for dabbing or oil upside down is 7-10. So
right.
420 users have kind of taken over that date. So it's almost there, but not quite. But as far as entrepreneurial spirit goes in Canada, I think we'll see a boom come over the next few years. Now, we don't have legalization of anything except flower to start with, but it will be evolving and adding more products in as time goes on. Edibles and medibles are supposed to be added in within 12 months of legalization. So so we're looking at that in the near future. Entrepreneurs are busy, hard at work, developing products, approaching legal producers, and making deals today for that future market that is going to evolve in Canada as the system is rolled out.
So do you see a mom and pop's opportunity? Do you see an opportunity for, the home crafter, let's say? Do you see infused menus being part of the restaurant industry?
I do, but not till the future. I don't see any of that happening in the next 12 months. It's going to take at least 12 months for this government to ease into this system. I think they're going to heavily restrict and heavily regulate and heavily fine anybody outside of the legal producing system in Canada for at least the first 12 months.
Yep, I think you're absolutely right. Kim, I have to say thank you very much for joining me today. I'd love to get more insight from you in the future. For now, I think we've managed to say that cannabis competency does diminish fear, and being active, open-minded, and staying informed or getting informed is very self-empowering. Once again, thank you for being here with me today, Kim, and thank you for tuning in to today's Cannabis Conversation with Kim Cooper. I'm your host, Green Irene, saying be happy, get healthy, and stay strong. Ciao for now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.